Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into a topic that is injecting a whole new level of urgency into boardrooms everywhere. Agentic AI.
Yeah, it's definitely top of mind right now.
So for the last couple of years, right, the business world's been trying to figure out Gen AI. Many executives invested pretty heavily, but let's be honest,
Yeah.
they're still kind of struggling to see that massive bottom line value.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. They're caught in what Gardner called the trough of disillusionment.
Right. But, there's that great Wayne Gretzky quote about skating to where the puck is going to be.
Uh-huh.
Well, that puck, it's moving much faster now than I think anyone really anticipated.
Yeah.
So our mission today is pretty simple. We need to move past that early Gen AI pain point and really understand the strategic roadmap CEOs need. How do they position themselves for the real value prop, what people are calling the agentic age?
And what's interesting, I think, is that this trough of disillusionment, it isn't actually a dead end. It's more of an opportunity. It's the gap, where the really decisive executives can jump ahead, but only if they really get the tech they're adopting. Agentic AI is just fundamentally different from the chatbots and copilots most companies have been playing with.
How so? Different how?
Well, we're talking about software systems, right, built with generative AI that actually have the ability to plan, act, remember, and critically learn, all to achieve these predefined outcomes autonomously.
So not just following a command.
Exactly. They don't just take an instruction, they break it down, execute the steps, they handle exceptions when things go wrong, and they improve the process themselves over time. This isn't just, augmentation. It's potentially a fundamental rewiring of how companies actually run and generate value.
Okay, rewiring. That sounds big. And the reward for that kind of re-architecture, it's not just theory, right? We're seeing real acceleration, not just tweaking things. What are some of the earliest hard numbers coming out of companies actually doing this successfully?
Yeah, we are seeing significant verifiable value almost immediately, especially in those really labor-intensive back office processes and tech modernization.
Like what kind of numbers?
Well, for starters, just harnessing these AI agents, it can speed up project timelines by, say, 40 to 50%.
Wow.
And at the same time, they're cutting costs by more than 40%. And this isn't cutting corners. It's often improving the quality of the technical output, too.
40 to 50% faster while cutting costs by 40%. I mean, that sounds almost like those initial pilot metrics, the kind that maybe aren't sustainable across the whole company.
Yeah.
How does that scale?
That's a fair question. And it's exactly why you need to focus on these targeted early wins that really prove the model works. Think about this leading universal bank, right? They had this massive technical debt problem, huge backlog, and a shortage of developers.
A familiar story for many.
Absolutely. So they didn't just try to hire more people. Instead, they built what they called a tech modernization agent factory.
An agent factory. Okay.
Yeah. And this factory used, get this, 100 agents supervised by just 5 humans.
5 people supervising 100 agents.
Right. And those agents, they were capable of doing the entire modernization lifecycle pretty much autonomously.
Yep.
So from reverse engineering old code all the way to designing and building the new applications.
And the result?
That specific initiative, it cut time and labor costs by more than 50%. And that wasn't just one task. It was across the entire process lifecycle.
Okay, that's the crucial connection, isn't it? It's not just about saving a few minutes here and there. It's about potentially eliminating entire processes, entire handoffs between teams.
Precisely. Look, the initial uses of agents, supporting people, automating simple tasks, that can drive maybe 3 to 5% in annual productivity improvements at the corporate level. And that's good. That's the baseline value.
And that transformative.
No. The true long-term goal, and this is why the CEO needs to be all over this, is when you have teams of AI agents handling complex workflows end-to-end, that level of integration, it could increase company growth by as much as 10%.
10% growth.
Okay,
Right.
yeah. And that's why we have to distinguish between just simple augmentation, like a copilot, and this full workflow re-architecture we're talking about.
Okay, that 10% growth figure,
Yeah.
that's the North Star then. But to actually get there, CEOs need a new way of thinking, almost a new operating language. Our sources suggest breaking agents down into 2 clear categories helps clarify things. Agentic labor and the agentic engine. It sounds like that helps figure out where to put the investment.
Exactly. It frames the strategy.
So let's start with agentic labor. What are the sort of immediate applications people are rolling out today, and what are the limits of just staying in that category?
Right. So, agentic labor is basically agents helping with the work you already do. Think of it as just automating sort of fragmented tasks within the existing process. We typically see this in two common forms right now. First, there's individual augmentation. Your agent drafting notes, summarizing meetings, maybe generating the first draft of code. Studies are showing pretty consistently like 20 to 30% higher personal throughput for knowledge workers using these tools.
So definite productivity boost for the individual.
For sure, but the expectation is this just becomes table stakes pretty quickly. The cost of doing business, kind of like how email or using shared documents is today.
Right. Everyone needs it. What's the second form?
The second is task and workflow automation. So automating existing, pretty well-defined processes. A classic example is handling routine transactional calls in a contact center. Early deployments there, they're delivering maybe 20 to 40% faster cycle times or lower costs for that specific task.
Okay, but the limitation you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
it's the fragmentation, right? If these agents are just working in their own little silos, they still need humans to connect the dots, and they're often working within systems that aren't that efficient to begin with.
That's the core impediment, exactly. These use cases, they rarely translate into a really significant broad business impact because they're just bolted onto the old, often linear processes. They help people do their current job faster, maybe, but they don't fundamentally change the job itself.
Got it. So how do we make the leap? How do we move from these helpful but maybe limited tools that just augment people to the agentic engine, what you call the real game changer?
Yeah, the agentic engine, it's the mandatory step if you want to unlock that potential 10% growth. It requires completely rethinking and frankly redesigning workflows to be agent first.
Agent first.
Meaning you stop just automating the existing steps and you actually redesign the whole journey, the whole outcome. You build teams of agents that are orchestrated, working together seamlessly across the business, and they eliminate those handoffs, those fragmented activities that only existed because, a human was needed to translate data or push something along.
Can you give us an example of that kind of redesigned impact?
Sure. Look at customer care again. Instead of just automating call routing, an agentic engine approach could automate, say, 60 to 80% of all incoming requests entirely, start to finish.
60 to 80% with comparable satisfaction.
Or better, in some cases, yeah. But the highest level of value, where things get really transformative, is in what we're calling cross-functional agentic systems.
Okay, cross-functional, like across departments.
Exactly. Imagine getting a mortgage approved, underwritten, and packaged in seconds, not days or weeks.
Wow.
Or think about a 247 field service agent that can autonomously dispatch a technician, order the necessary parts, and notify the customer, all happening automatically across what used to be separate functional silos like logistics, inventory, customer service.
That sounds radically different. What's the impact there?
Well, early pilots for these kinds of really labor-heavy processes, they saw up to 70 to 80% reductions in cost per transaction. That's a fundamental shift. It's moving from saving minutes to literally eliminating hours of work.
Okay, but getting that kind of result, that scale.
It means the traditional operating model, the org chart as you know it, is basically gone. Or at least it has to radically change. The CEO and the board, they have to be intimately involved in re-architecting the entire operating model. Incremental changes, just tweaking around the edges, they simply won't get you there.
Okay, so if this demands a full re-architecture, then sitting back and waiting, that sounds pretty high risk.
Extremely high risk.
Our sources highlight, I think it was 4 essential mindsets or actions CEOs really need to adopt right now. Can you walk us through those?
Yeah, absolutely. First, reimagine what's possible. You've got to move beyond just basic task automation. Think bigger.
Okay, number 2.
Second, act with urgency. Start learning now. The wait-and-see approach is just too dangerous with how fast this is moving.
Brilliant.
Third, tackle scale and long-term competitiveness issues right from the start. Don't just do pilots. Think about how this scales across the enterprise.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And the last one.
And fourth, maybe the most crucial for the workforce, turn everyone into an agent leader or supervisor. Because a supervising AI labor, that's going to be the new universal skill set.
Supervising AI.
Yeah.
Okay, so that urgency, how does it translate into actual goals for, say, the first year? What should companies be aiming for?
Right. Year one is really about laying the foundation. The primary focus needs to be on breaking that organizational inertia, getting some quick wins, and driving down operating costs in specific targeted functions. You should be aiming for maybe up to 10% efficiency gains in those areas.
10% in year one, okay. Are there specific markers leaders should look for by the end of that first year?
Definitely. There are a couple of key markers. First is the fluency marker. By the end of year one, you really need 25 to 50% of your employees actively working with enterprise-grade agents and AI tools on a regular basis. It needs to become part of the workflow.
So building that baseline capability.
Exactly. And the second is the automation marker. This is the proof it's working. In targeted use cases, your agent should be autonomously correcting simple, well-structured data quality issues with something like 90 to 95% accuracy and resolution.
Okay, but hitting 95% resolution in one area only matters if you can actually scale that success, right? How do companies operationalize this? How do they build this transformation capability without just creating chaos everywhere?
That's the critical piece. The core action here is creating what the source calls the agentic factory.
The agentic factory, again, so like a central hub.
Pretty much. It's a central, probably enterprise-level team. Their job is to identify the high-value workflows ripe for redesign, manage that redesign process, and then crucially scale that redesign consistently across the entire organization.
What's key for that factory to get right?
There's one critical design mandate they must enforce: composable agents.
Composable, meaning reusable parts.
Exactly. The factory has to force teams to build agents using standardized reusable components or elements, not these big, monolithic, one-off flows for every single use case.
Why is that so important?
Because if you don't mandate composability from the start, you inevitably end up with this uncontrolled sprawl of different agents that you can't govern, you can't secure, you certainly can't update efficiently. It's basically the same strategic decision Amazon made years ago when they mandated internal APIs for everything. Everything has to be designed for reuse and interconnection if you want to scale effectively.
Okay, so that's year one. Build the factory, focus on composability, hit those fluency and automation markers. Now, as we move into years 2 and 3, how does the focus shift?
It shifts pretty dramatically. You stop measuring just activity like how many people used an agent this week, and you start measuring real P&L impact. This is where the company goes all in on fully agentifying key customer journeys end to end, not just integrating agents into the old way of doing things.
Agentifying journeys? Okay,
Yeah.
and there's a scale marker for this phase too.
Yeah. The big marker for this period is when that first fully reimagined journey, your internal lighthouse case, hits a tipping point. It needs to reach greater than 90% automation.
90% automation of a major journey. Wow.
And this is when the really profound implications for the workforce model start to bite. The ratio of agents to, full-time employees, FTEs, it shifts dramatically.
How dramatically?
Well, think about software development. For the labor involved in the software development lifecycle, FTE needs could potentially drop by as much as 30 to 40%.
30 to 40%.
Yeah. Or look at tasks in financial planning and reporting. The workload reduction there could be as high as 75%.
75%. Okay, these kinds of reductions, they aren't just marginal efficiency gains anymore. This sounds like proof that the traditional operating model, built around static functions in silos and humans handing things off linearly, it's just completely inadequate for this agentic age.
It basically begins to erode entirely. The business has to be reoriented around outcomes and value streams, not functions.
So organizing teams differently.
Completely. It means organizing these new human agentic teams around shared goals, like maybe customer onboarding or closing a new sale. Goals that naturally cut across those traditional functional boundaries like marketing, finance, operations, IT.
And that obviously requires a whole new talent strategy.
Absolutely. You need what the source calls a human-agent hybrid operating model. People, leaders, HR, they have to refocus on teaching totally new skills. How do you build agents? How do you train them effectively? How do you set tasks for them, monitor them, supervise them?
Well, supervising the AI.
And new, probably higher value roles will definitely emerge. Things like agent orchestrator or agent trainer.
So performance management has to change too, right? I mean, you can't just review the human's output if a bot is doing 75% of the actual work.
No, you absolutely can't. Performance management, annual reviews, all of that, it has to adjust to focus on new agent management KPIs.
Like what?
Things like, the number of tasks completed with agents effectively, or the measured quality and the cost effectiveness of the agent's output that the human is responsible for overseeing.
Okay.
And looking out a bit further, McKinsey's research suggests that up to 30% of all current worked hours across the economy could potentially be automated by 2030.
30% of hours worked.
Yeah, which means this necessitates a full recalibration of HR systems, of budgeting processes.
Hmm.
You're fundamentally shifting significant investment from pure labor to technology and agent capabilities. It's a massive shift. Hashtag outro outro.
So wrapping this up, what does this all really mean for the executives listening? It feels like agentic AI has just injected this incredible new urgency into everything, right? Moving the timeline up dramatically.
Absolutely.
The big lesson from this deep dive seems crystal clear. You need decisive, thoughtful action now. You've got to move beyond just automating isolated tasks and commit to that full organizational re-architecture using the agentic engine concept. That seems like the only path to unlock these new opportunities for both productivity and that potentially 10% plus growth.
I think that's right. And what's fascinating here, maybe the highest level challenge facing leaders today, it isn't really about the technology itself anymore. It's more about managing the strategic risk of the transformation. So maybe a final thought, a provocation for everyone listening. If you were the CEO right now, what concrete strategies would you put in place, starting today, to defend your existing business model, your IP, against a world where agents could potentially disrupt your relationships with your customers, with your suppliers, through what the source called agent-produced disintermediation?
Agent-produced disintermediation. Wow.
That's the big strategic question, isn't it? That's the highest level challenge leaders need to wrestle with.
That is definitely the question you should be wrestling with right now. You just took the shortcut to understanding the agentic age. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.